It's April 2nd, 2020, and this is my monthly update video. As everyone knows, we're in the middle of quite a crisis, so there's a lot to be said about that. And I think I may shoot a video specifically about that, so I don't go into too much detail here. I want to put the focus just on talking about what went on in March that you might want to know about and what we've got coming up in April. There's a lot of cool online events that you can participate in. I always like to begin by talking about three big things. So big thing number one, the Wisdom for Life radio show, which recently had its third episode air, is still ongoing. My host and I have found a good MO for recording despite being in separate places and not being able to get into the radio station. Big thing number two, I did a workshop with the STOA earlier last month, and I'm doing another one this month on solitude and cultivating inner life, which I'll talk about in the April section. And finally, big thing number three, I'm starting something new that I've wanted to do for quite some time, which is going to be an online event devoted specifically to talking about classic, that is 1970s and 1980s primarily, heavy metal. And I'll tell you more about that in the April section as well. So let's talk about March 1st. Well, as all of you know, we're in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, so a lot of things got canceled. That included my face-to-face events. We did not have the Worlds of Speculative Fiction series ongoing that was hosted at the Brookfield Public Library because all the libraries are closed at this point, and we're not doing public events. I was, however, able to do quite a few online events. So I had my AMA, that is Ask Me Anything session. Link to it is below. I did my half-hour Hegel meetups, right, where I do Q&A and discussion, both the public one and the one just for Patreon supporters. I did a philosophy pop-up specifically on Stoic philosophy and practice. We had two airings of the Wisdom for Life radio show, and we actually have the honor of being the last people to do a live show in studio at River West Radio, in part because we showed up without knowing that the station was officially closed due to the COVID pandemic. We hadn't received the email. So we came in and we did our show. I'll put the links to those two shows below if you want to listen to them. And what else? We had our Milwaukee Stoic Fellowship meeting. We did it remotely using Zoom this time. And I also did a workshop for the STOA, which is based in Toronto, Canada. And I did a workshop specifically on the virtue of fortitude and how it helps us deal with failures and failings. So the video for that is available. You can see it below if you're interested in that topic. Very important one that we don't often talk about, I think, but plays a major role in any form of intentional living. So those were the events. I also did a couple podcast interviews, one with the Stoic psychologist and one with the practical Stoic. Links to those are also listed below as well. And I continued my work with tutorials and philosophical counseling and ethics consulting. There's actually a bit more demand for that right now. My classes, of course, all of you have heard, I think, about the pivot to online. So 3 of my classes for this semester were already online. Now, one of them is in rather difficult circumstances because it's for inmates in Wisconsin prisons. It's part of what's called the Second Chance Pell program, which I might shoot a video about that as well. That would probably be a good idea for me to do. And they're mostly in lockdown. So many of my students can't communicate with me. Their modes of communication were already rather limited. and we're just trying to get them through the rest of the semester. And I give them a lot of content that I load into their class Moodle shell so that they can have a rich learning experience. This semester, they're actually doing Introduction to Ethics, and so I'm having them, reading Kant and John Stuart Mill and Mary Wollstonecraft and Aristotle and people like that. And I give them the videos that you've seen in the channel. I take those and edit them and compress them and then upload them into their own institutional Moodle shell so that they can watch them and learn from them. So that's been quite a challenge. And I've had two face-to-face classes that have had to transition online as well. One of them is my Intro to Humanities class at Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, and that's going pretty good, I would say. It's a bit of a challenge to adapt it to online, but we've managed. And then my business ethics class has been a bit less of a challenge, in part because I'd already taught it as an online class, so I had 108 lecture videos for that I provide as supplementary resources for the students when I teach face-to-face, and then those become part of the core when we teach online, right? And I may shoot some more videos for that class as well this coming month. What else? Did, a lot of work with the Sadler's Lectures podcast and released a lot of content on Nietzsche, both on his Truth and Lies in an Extra Moral Sense and on Thus Spoke Zarathustra Part 1. And we also managed to release all the videos the podcast episodes made from videos on Blaise Pascal's Pensées. So that's quite good. That's something to look forward to. And when it comes to videos, I'm very happy to say that this month I was able to produce a half-hour Hegel video. That felt really good to be able to get back into it. I'm looking forward to doing more this month. I also produced a video doing a little bit of a meme analysis on trolley memes having to do with COVID-19 and, say, governmental and business responses to it. I did a book review video on Peter Stankiewicz's excellent work on Stoicism and creativity. Link to that is below. And I did a video to help my fellow instructors make the transition to online. Some of you may be interested in this if you want to get into video production yourself. It's called Bare Bones for Video Producers, and I'll put a link to that as well. The radio show, we managed to video record one of the sessions, obviously the one that was in studio. And I did some, core concept videos for my classes. Released some on John Rawls' Theory of Justice, on John Stuart Mill's On Liberty, and on Plato's Republic, Book 4. The other thing that I did do quite a bit of video production on, but you're not going to see coming out for quite a while, for my Intro to Humanities class, we're actually reading Marjan Satrapi's Persepolis, Volume 1, which is a graphic novel, and it's about growing up in Iran under the Shah, and then during the time of the revolution, and then in the time of the Islamic Republic. And Satrapi is actually my age. We're actually only a few months apart in our birthdays. So I grew up in the same times, remembering a lot of this stuff happening. I also grew up in a very media literate family, so I knew quite a bit of what was going on in Iran from my especially from my dad, who followed the events quite closely. So for me, I understand, the background of the things that are happening in the story, but many of my students, who are all Generation Z, they don't, right? And they can relate to it in many ways on many of the themes, but they don't know some of what's happening in that era. So I've been producing short lecture videos for them, going over aspects of the text. I might release those later on down the line. Right now, those are just for my MyEd students. So that's what's been going on in March. And let's talk about what's going to happen in April now. We have quite a few online events for the month of April. Now, one thing you definitely want to remember is that I live here in Milwaukee, so I'm on Central Daylight Time. The times I'm going to give are for Central Daylight Time. So if you're in any other time zone, you need to figure out when the event is, or else you might show up too early or too late and then be a bit disappointed. You can always look on the reasonio.com calendar, the events calendar. I keep that updated. And of course, I also put a lot of these events into my Facebook page as events, so you can find them there as well. So let me run through them, and I'll tell you a little bit about each of them along the way. This Saturday on the 4th, 2 days from now at 12 p.m., we kick off the month with an AMA, that is Ask Me Anything session, hosted on YouTube Live. You want to get your questions in early, and if you are doing the AMA, I do give preference to people who are asking questions that haven't been asked before. So if you're asking about Zizek or Land or stuff like that, or Peterson, those usually go by the wayside. It's more for stuff that we haven't talked about in previous AMA sessions. And I try to make sure that everybody gets to ask a question. So if you ask 20 questions, I may not actually answer all of your questions. So, get in early, think about the questions you want to ask, and then I'll try to answer them as best as I can. On the 7th, which is a Tuesday at 6 p.m., we will have our monthly meeting of the Milwaukee chapter of SOPHIA. SOPHIA is the Society of Philosophers in America. It's a national organization devoted to doing public philosophy and making philosophy accessible to everybody. So we are going to be discussing the themes of isolation and loneliness and solidarity, something very timely for this. And we'll be doing that in a Zoom session. I will put the information in the event site. You can go to MKE Sophia in Meetup and find the information there. You don't have to be in Milwaukee to join in on this conversation. Obviously, we're going to have people dropping in from other areas, although we are trying to build a community of inquiry here in Milwaukee. We'll also be having, and I'm not sure exactly about the scheduling for this, so I can't give you times, but I can at least tell you, I think, the days. On 2 of the Fridays in this month of April coming up, probably on the 10th, and then it'd likely be the 24th. We'll hopefully have the Wisdom for Life radio show doing new episodes. It's up to the station manager, and he's kind of moving the schedule around a little bit. So I can't say that it'll be at the normal time of 5 p.m. It might be at 2 p.m. Who knows? So you want to pay attention to the station for that. And I'll have announcements about it as well on my social media. On the 11th, that's a Saturday, at 12 p.m., we will have our philosophy chat for Patreon supporters. That is a perk for people at a certain level of support of the work that I do. And it's a video conferencing thing again. They get to, chat with me one-on-one and have conversations about anything they want to in philosophy. On the 15th at 5 p.m., we'll have our public Hegel Q&A and discussion session. That's where you can come if you've got questions about Hegel, the half-hour Hegel project, German idealism, philosophy more generally. I make myself available for an hour just to chat about these things with people, and that's being, of course, supported by my Patreon backers. So you can thank them for that. On the 18th at 12 p.m., that's a Saturday, I will be doing another workshop with the STOA. So I mentioned this as one of the 3 big things. The STOA is this organization up in Toronto, and they're doing a lot of online programming, a lot of cool stuff. And, you can drop into it. I'm going to be doing a talk this time specifically about isolation and solitude and the opportunity of cultivating an interior life. And I'm going to be drawing upon some ancient philosophy, Aristotle and the Stoics, But I'm also bringing in existentialists as well, particularly Rainer Maria Rilke, the great poet and letter writer. His Letters to a Young Poet frames solitude or Einsamkeit as a major conception of his, and it runs throughout the rest of his works. Bit of Nietzsche, some other figures as well, perhaps Gabriel Marcel. So we'll be talking about that. You're perfectly, welcome to join in, but that's not something that I'm running as an event. I'm providing the content, but you have to sign up with them in order to participate on their site, and I'll give you a link to that below. You always click more, and you see all this wonderful stuff. And here's another big thing coming up that I mentioned. On the 23rd at 1 p.m., I'm going to be doing something quite new. We're calling it the Classic Metal Club or Classic Metal Chat. I haven't quite decided on it yet. I'm going to bring in a few of my musician friends to give me some feedback on that. And I'm going to be meeting with people via Zoom for about an hour and a half. I'm going to do a presentation, and it's going to be about, some of the history of heavy metal. So I'm going to be focusing on, basically the early to mid 70s, talking about the origins and the major early bands and the cross influences between them and what was going on. It's not just about Black Sabbath and then everything else happening after them. There were a lot of other bands that were part of the picture. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll have like an open Q&A and discussion session. I may, in fact, have some guests who are also really conversant in this stuff. I'm hoping that I might be able to, for example, bring in my good friend Scott Terulli or another one of my good friends, Blitch66. We'll see whether they're available and whether they're up to it. They're both, practicing musicians who have done a lot of cool stuff and have a lot of views on this sort of thing. And we've had many conversations about the history of it. So that I'm really excited about that. And I'll put more news about that, of course, in my social media. The last big event will be on the 30th, last day of the month, 6 p.m., the MKE Stoic Fellowship, open to people outside of Milwaukee. We had somebody joining from the Des Moines Stoics and somebody joining from one of the Florida Stoic meetup groups that he runs this last time. We are, of course, a local organization, but it's open at this point in time to other people joining in our Zoom meetings. So if you're interested in that, you want to go to MKE Stoic Fellowship in Meetup and see what we've got lined up. The other thing that I'll say is that I probably will do some pop-ups over the course of the month, since once I actually get a bit caught up on my schedule, I'll do that as well, and I'll do that through YouTube Live. I've got a lot of class work to do as usual. I'm still proceeding as well with all my business-related things, the ethics consulting, philosophical counseling, a few new clients due to the COVID crisis. And anxieties about that, and thinking about what to do, getting tapped by a couple organizations to help them in other ways with consulting. So I'm doing some behind the scenes sorts of things, and of course I've got my regular classroom teaching and then tutorials that I'm doing as well. For the podcast, the Sadler's Lectures podcast, I'm going to be doing William James's The Will to Believe, and then a lot of Epictetus content, and that'll probably take me through the month. I do want to mention something that's really cool that I should have brought up before. So the Sadler's Lectures podcast has now been incorporated into the True Sci-Fi channel, which is a 24/7 streaming channel of some of the best ideas podcasts out there. It's kind of nice recognition. They wrote me and said, hey, can we incorporate your stuff? It's other things like History of Philosophy with No Gaps and Philosophy Bites and Stoic Meditations and all these other great philosophy-oriented podcasts. So I said, yeah, of course. Sure, you can stream my content. So that's a cool development. If I do get Epictetus done, then I'll probably do a poll about who I should do next in the Sadler's Lectures. let's talk about videos now. And this will bring us to the end of this rather long update. I'm going to try to get 6 half-hour Hegel videos done this month. I want to get moving back on that project and finish this spirit section that I've been in for several years now and get on to the religion section, which is the second to last section of the work. And then it's sort of, moving downhill. And I might actually finish the half-hour Hegel project. Probably not this year, but, next year. Book reviews. I'm going to do some more book reviews videos, so stay tuned for those. Got some really cool books that have been sent to me. We'll have videos of quite a few of the events, of course, the STOA workshop, the metal chat, maybe a few other things as well. Core concept videos. I'm going to be shooting some stuff on Cicero's On Friendship, some other stuff on McIntyre's After Virtue, and quite a few stuff on William James's essay Pragmatism, all of which I need for my courses. If I can get to anything else, I will, but I'm probably this month going to be doing some odds and ends stuff. So what do I mean by that? Well, when I shot, for example, my videos on Camus' Myth of Sisyphus, I didn't actually get to all of the videos that I wanted to create, right? So there's a few that never got shot. Okay, I'll do those this month. Or, there's an Anselm video on his De Libertate that I need to shoot. And there's a few other odds and ends like that here laying around, sitting on my desktop as thumbnails, reminding me that I need to get to them. So hopefully this month I will be able to get to them. That's everything that I've got on my end. I hope that all of you are healthy and safe and well stocked up. And I also hope that I'll see some of you in these online events that we have planned, whether it's something just to be helpful for you or a nice distraction or something in between. My hope is that these will be in some way beneficial for you. So hope to see some of you there, and hope all of you have as good a month as possible in these circumstances.